Greetings. Welcome to Avon Valley Church's Bible Bedtime Stories. My name is Jan, and this is my naughty but lovable rescue dog, Susie. She is mischievous. We've had her 9 years now, and we've worked so hard on discipline. Luckily, she's very lovable. Even though she's got such a strong will, she really still does what she wants and gets away with it. We walk along the river Avon, don't we, every morning, and she loves to see the swans and the cygnets. The 7 cygnets were born in May, and they still exist, all 7 of them, and they're now big, the size of ducks. Susie treats them now with respect, whether it's just because the ducks stare at her with such disdain, but she's been really very good. She found the biscuit, that's why she jumped. Cheeky little mother. Now today we have a story, but it's rather sad, I'm afraid. It's about how King Solomon let all his power and riches go to his head. He so enjoyed himself he forgot that he answered to God for all his actions. But first of all, let us remember all the good things he did. He built great granaries and storehouses all over the land, and when there was a good harvest, he would store up food, and then when there were bad times, he would get the food out of the granaries. That's when there were poor harvests. Solomon had a strong army and a strong navy, so no one attacked him, and there was peace in his country. But now, let us remember the bad things that he did. He became a show-off, impressing other kings with all his wealth and having such extravagant parties. He assembled a great court of people all around him at great expense. Worst of all, he forgot that his father, David, had united the people and created this great country. He forgot that God had blessed the people. He forgot to pray and talk to God every day. So God was very disappointed with Solomon. All your power has made you selfish and disrespectful, thought God. In those days, kings or rich kings could have many wives. The more powerful they were, the more wives they would have. Now Solomon was the most important king all around, so he had the most wives. Many of these wives came from lands that he had conquered, and many were sent to him as presents from kings all around. The wives all had a great time and lived in great luxury. But many of these wives didn't believe in God of Israel. They worshipped made-up gods, such as a god they called Baal. So they said, "Oh, mighty king, you have a lovely temple to worship your God, so we want a special place to worship our god Baal." Well, because Solomon liked to spoil his wives and give them lots of presents and so on, he said, "Oh, all right, you can have what you want." And he built them a lovely shrine to worship Baal. The wives were delighted. Solomon is thought to be wise, they said, but we can lead him astray and make him do what we want. Now God was very sad. Here was the son of the great King David. Here was the man to whom God had given wisdom. Here was the most powerful man around. And these wives were leading him astray. But for the sake of King David, God allowed Solomon to continue as king. After ruling for 40 years, Solomon died. Then his son Rehoboam became king. But during Solomon's reign, God had been planning the next move. The people had become very cross with Solomon. They said, well, he used to be respectful to God and to appreciate that a king is there to lead his people and to care for his people. Now, one of Solomon's courtiers, a man called Jeroboam, was particularly cross with Solomon. So he went out into the countryside to seek advice from a prophet called Ahijah. Prophets are people who pray a lot and talk to God and had answers, and God answered them and advised them. And when Jeroboam met the prophet Ahijah, that prophet was wearing a blue cloak over his gown. Dramatically took off his blue cloak and tore it into 12 pieces, one piece for each of the 12 tribes of the people of Israel. Then he gave 10 pieces to Jeroboam. Oh, when King Solomon dies, he said, 12 tribes of Israel will be divided. Solomon's son can keep 2 of them, and you, Jeroboam, will be called to lead the 10 northern tribes. And yours shall be called the kingdom of Israel. The combined southern tribes will be called the kingdom of Judah, and Solomon's son will be their king. Jeroboam thanked the prophet for God's message and for his wisdom. Jeroboam also thanked God for trusting him. Jeroboam told 1 or 2 friends his secret. Oh, but they told 1 or 2 friends, and so the story was out. For his own safety, Jeroboam had to leave the promised land, and he went to Egypt to live. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became king. But the people told him he must stop all the expensive ways of Solomon if he was to be their king. Oh, but the silly young man said that he planned to carry on spending just like his father Solomon. Only the combined tribes of Benjamin, of Judah, stayed with him. The other 10 tribes left him. So the young king was left with the capital city, Jerusalem, and the land around it, and the desert to the south of it. They called this land Judah. The 10 other tribes called to Jeroboam to return from Egypt and be their leader. They had all called it the land of Israel. So Jeroboam came from Egypt, became leader of Israel. He was a wise and good man, so they made him their king. There was no fighting. There was just great sadness that the promised land was now divided into 2 parts. Rehoboam, son of Solomon, was king of Judah, and Jeroboam was made king of Israel. Judah was the land to the south, and Israel was the land to the north. So there were priests to the south to lead the worship to God, and priests to the north to do the same. And that was the way it stayed for many, many years. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye. I'm sorry Susie didn't stay long. Bye-bye.